I'm a 38-year-old guy who tied the knot with my 33-year-old wife about 2 years ago. We had been dating for 3 years before deciding to take the plunge into marriage. I was a bit hesitant about it, but I wanted to make her happy, so I agreed. Around a year into our marriage, we decided to start a family. My wife was particularly keen on having a baby. The journey to conception wasn't easy, though. We faced numerous challenges, and it took a toll on my mental health. Frustrated and overwhelmed, I decided to get myself tested. The doctor dropped a bombshell on me. I was sterile. The news shattered me. Despite not being initially gung-ho about having a child, the idea had grown on me, and the realization that I couldn't be a father was devastating. What made matters worse was my wife's behavior during this trying time. She became mean, and I tried my best to cope with it. However, it became too much to handle. A few days after learning about my infertility, I mustered the courage to tell her the truth. I wanted her to know that I was the reason we couldn't conceive, but fate had other plans. For days after I found out about my sterility, my wife dropped a bombshell of her own. She was pregnant. I was taken aback, shocked to my core. She was blissfully unaware of my internal struggle and started celebrating. Immediately, in an attempt to keep up the facade, I joined in on her happiness. However, the very next day I got tested again just to confirm my sterility, and the results were consistent. Now I find myself at a crossroads. If I'm not the father, then who is? The unsettling thought that my wife might be cheating on me looms large. The medical procedures my wife needed, artificial conception, were expensive. And being the sole breadwinner, she couldn't have pursued them without asking me for the money. The idea that she might be cheating crept into my mind, but it seemed so bizarre and awful that I didn't act on it immediately. In the days that followed, my wife, oblivious to my internal struggle, was busy planning a grand party to announce her pregnancy. While she radiated joy, I was shattered inside. I had to keep a composed exterior, not letting my turmoil show, as I was determined to get to the bottom of this bewildering situation. I didn't share the ordeal with my family or friends. It felt too personal and uncomfortable to disclose. I couldn't bring myself to talk to my wife either. Time had passed, and I needed to figure out who the father of her child was before confronting her. The fear was that if I confronted her prematurely, she might leave, and I'd be left in the dark. The revelation came on the day of the party, attended by family, friends, and even some of my coworkers. Among the guests was our 27-year-old neighbor, a model striving to make a name for himself. He's undeniably more attractive than me, and my wife had always shown a soft spot for him. They shared common interests and got along well, occasionally having dinners together. As he walked into our house on the day of the party, my wife's eyes lit up. They hugged, and it felt longer and different from her embraces with other guests. While no one else seemed to notice, I sensed something had changed. Suspecting there might be more to their connection, I excused myself to the bathroom but went to our bedroom instead, trying to find answers. I accessed my wife's laptop. Checking her phone earlier yielded no suspicious results, but her laptop had been a challenge to get to. Whenever I asked what she was doing, she deflected, claiming to be working on her novel, which had been ongoing for months. I had respected her privacy, believing she was genuinely engrossed in her writing. My world had shifted, and I was now certain that her novel was merely a guise to conceal the true contents of her laptop. Luckily, there was no password to hinder my access. After some digging, I stumbled upon another email account she had been using alongside her real one. As I sifted through the emails, I was confronted with a cascade of confessions of love from my wife and our neighbor. The real kicker came in the more recent emails, where she revealed her pregnancy to him. He didn't take the news well, and the communication seemed to pause as he contemplated ending things. However, my wife was determined to keep him. The most horrifying email unfolded her sinister plan. She had spoken to a friend who was a lawyer, concocting a scheme to file for divorce right after the baby's birth. The reason she had pressured me into having a child was to secure both alimony and child support, intending to run away with our neighbor a few months after the divorce for their supposed happily ever after. The disgust I felt reading that email was indescribable. Cheating was one thing, but the cold calculation to manipulate me into funding her secret life with our neighbor was beyond comprehension. Despite her excellent acting, I hadn't suspected a thing. Her apparent happiness now seemed almost disturbing. I shook off the nauseating feelings and got to work. I discreetly took several pictures of the incriminating emails on my phone before shutting down her laptop and returning it to its original place. The betrayal stung, but my anger overshadowed everything. The idea of revenge began to simmer within me, fueled by the depth of her deception and the lengths she was willing to go for her clandestine agenda. I had made up my mind to play along, letting her think everything was okay until I hit her with the truth when she least expected it. It might sound extreme, but I felt it was necessary to make her understand the hurt, betrayal, and frustration that had consumed me since discovering her dishonesty. For the next 9 months, I played the role of the perfect husband and soon-to-be father. It was challenging, knowing she was lying through her teeth. But the more she pretended, the more determined I became to see my plan through. I attended every doctor's appointment, ensured she took her vitamins, and played the supportive spouse. Finally, a few days ago, my wife went into labor. I was nervous, understandably so, but I put my feelings aside and took her to the hospital alone. I had already called her parents, but deliberately left mine out of the equation to avoid unnecessary drama. While we waited for her parents to arrive, I chose that moment to drop the bomb. Since she was safely in the delivery room, I told her I was going to call our neighbor to be with her. She seemed surprised, insisting she didn't want a stranger present during childbirth. I smiled, showing her the results of my fertility test and the divorce papers I had filed just before her due date. As she sifted through the documents, still looking bewildered, I explained that I couldn't be the father and the baby wasn't mine. I revealed the emails from her secret account, and in that moment, she grasped the reality of the situation. The look on her face as I walked out, leaving her to grapple with the truth, was something else. I thought I'd need medical attention myself. That's how fast my heart was pounding. Once outside, I called our neighbor to inform him of the situation and sped away. I even turned off my phone for good measure, driving until I reached a motel outside of town. I unpacked the bags I had stashed in my car weeks ago, prepared for this very moment. The next day, I woke up, turned on my phone, and found it flooded with messages from my wife and the neighbor. I didn't bother opening any of them. Instead, I responded to texts from my parents and brother. They deserved an explanation. I told them I'd be heading home soon to lay out the entire situation. They needed to know the truth. I drove to my parents' house, and my brother was already there. They all looked confused and kind of annoyed, which was expected, considering I missed the child and made them miss the grandchild's birth. I sat them down and explained the whole story, the reasons behind my actions. I braced myself for a barrage of questions and accusations, but nothing of the sort happened. My dad only said he hoped nothing worse would happen, and the others remained silent. It was surprisingly chill on that front. That was a few days ago. While my family hasn't said much, my wife has gone above and beyond to accuse me of ruining her experience of becoming a mother for the first time. She's been trying to call and text me ever since I left, but I haven't answered anything. Even my neighbor texted me a few hours ago, saying my wife was really upset and that we should keep our differences aside for her sake and try to sort things out. I can't believe the audacity these people have. Trying to talk to me like this is some petty disagreement. My neighbor mentioned a couple of other things in his text, like how my wife has started to fall back in love with me during her pregnancy, which was a shock for both of them. He suggested I give our marriage a second chance. I called BS on that, because if she's fallen for me again, why is he still in the picture? I don't understand why they think I'm that stupid. My wife is upset, but there's nothing I can do about it. She's mostly angry that I knew everything from the beginning, but chose to be with her and put up with this whole act. Am I the jerk for staying with my wife through her pregnancy and misleading her, knowing the baby wasn't mine and she'd been cheating on me with our neighbor? It's been close to a week since the baby was born, and I've been staying in a hotel room. I haven't been over to see my wife yet, and I don't plan on going. She's still texting and calling me, but I don't know why, as I've made it clear that I'm not interested in speaking to her. I haven't blocked her yet, but I have blocked my neighbor since he took it upon himself to text me, reminding me that my wife still has hope and wants me to get back to her. I'm 100% sure he's doing it, so she'll get something out of the settlement and alimony, since both of them are basically unemployed. I want to acknowledge and respect that my wife chose to be a stay-at-home spouse, and that was her decision. It wasn't my suggestion for her to quit her job after we got married. Back when we were dating, she used to work, and I was supportive of that choice. Her decision to stay at home was entirely her own, and I was okay with it, especially considering I earned enough. However, the painful revelation came when I discovered that her stay-at-home role wasn't limited to managing our home. She was also cheating on me behind my back, which is something I find unforgivable. I believe my lawyer can help me avoid paying alimony once we can prove her infidelity. I'm hopeful that the evidence from the secret email account will make this process more straightforward. As for our neighbor, it seems he's still struggling to find lucrative modeling gigs, and managing their expenses with the baby on the way will likely be a challenge for them. I'm grateful to be out of this mess without having to give them anything. Not even my attention. The images of the emails exchanged on her secret account are securely saved on my phone and backed up on my laptop. Even if she decides to delete her account, those images will remain as evidence. I'm mentally prepared for any contestation in the divorce proceedings. Despite the situation, I've chosen to give her time to vacate our house instead of forcefully evicting her, considering it's registered under my name. While I hope she realizes the reality of the situation and doesn't prolong the process, I'm mentally prepared for whatever may come. My wife's decided to play hardball and negotiate, not satisfied with the settlement I offered. Honestly, what I put on the table was pretty generous, covering her expenses during our marriage. I can't fathom what miracle she's hoping for, but hey, it's her call. She texted me yesterday claiming she'd vacated the house. Excitedly, I headed back home, only to find out she moved across the street into our neighbor's house. Now I'm stuck seeing her and her boyfriend every single day. I thought about going back to living in a hotel, but this is my house, and I'm not budging. I won't pack up and leave just because they want to make me uncomfortable. I did wonder why she didn't crash with her parents. It would have been a smarter move for the divorce case. While scrolling through a mountain of unread messages, I caught one from my wife's father, buried in the mix. He apologized for her behavior, expressing strong disapproval and letting me know they had cut her off. That meant a lot to me and validated my feelings, even though it almost brought tears. He apologized for her actions and mentioned they were strongly against her contesting the divorce. So far, nothing she's doing makes any sense. It's like everything she does is bound to backfire. Her living arrangement is a recipe for complications, and I'm sure they'll try to make me uncomfortable or jealous, but I'm dead set on not letting them get under my skin, because I know they'll use that against me. In the grand scheme of things, I'm still saving a fortune by not living in a hotel. An update. After a month of divorce settlement negotiations, it's been a rocky ride for my wife. I managed to prove her infidelity, making my claims undeniable. She attempted some false accusations about me being an alcoholic, linking it to my sterility and the affair, but that was easily debunked, since I quit drinking last year when we decided to start trying for a baby. Now, we're both well aware that her chances of getting any alimony are slim. Recently, she was abruptly kicked out of her boyfriend's house with her baby. I witnessed the whole ugly scene from my living room. When I saw him shove her out, carrying the baby, I rushed to help. Forget animosity. I couldn't let an innocent baby suffer for something that wasn't his fault. By the time I reached their doorstep, the door had already slammed shut. I carried the baby, grabbed my wife's hands, and led them back to my house. I called her father, who showed up within an hour, and took them away. During that hour, both my wife and the baby were in tears, and I found myself calming them down. I wanted to call the cops, but she persuaded me to let it go, not wanting more trouble. She apologized profusely, admitting she'd lost her self-respect and morals in her desperation to be with the one she loved. She expressed genuine remorse, promising to accept whatever happens and not negotiate anymore, speeding up the divorce finalization. Despite everything, I don't regret being a decent person throughout this ordeal. I hope she eventually decides to press charges and finds healing for herself.